Hello, welcome to the second session for the Fall of Plaguestone campaign diary. Sorry about how long this one has taken to get out. I have had a couple of ailments facing me, so you might be able to hear in my voice that I am a little sick. So yeah, sorry about the delay. Last session, our heroes arrived at Etrin's Folly, and after the sudden poisoning of the beloved Bort set out to investigate the murder. Their investigation led them to seek out the staff members of the feed mill, and having already spoken with Amora, the cook, they had just arrived at Trin's house on the outskirts of town. As they approached, they heard a panicked man screaming, and moments later, Trin's brother Marnie came rushing around the side of the house, pursued by a flaming otter. Originally, this otter was supposed to be a simple, large boar. However, a common complaint I've seen online about this adventure is how Chapter 2 and 3 seem very disconnected and sudden in their change of story focus. What begins as a humble murder mystery suddenly becomes this conspiracy about elemental animals and alchemical experimentation. So, to help smooth out that upcoming transition, I wanted to keep teasing the elemental animals. I used a lava otter stat block to represent this burning otter, which is a level 1 creature opposed to the level 2 boar. But since I'm running for 3 players, it seemed like a good way of accounting for that difficulty. You could always give the lava otter the elite template if you make this change for 4 players. We rolled initiative and the first combat of the session began. The initial setup of this fight was designed to make our heroes think about the protection of the non-combatant. I started with them far enough away that they'd need to either use all their actions to engage the otter directly, or get close enough to then use some kind of ability to get its attention. However, aside from Namari, who went first, the initiative order didn't end up in their favour, and after Namari ran forward and drew her sword, she hadn't done anything to make herself the more appealing target. The flaming otter rushed up to Marnie, bit him with a critical hit, and reduced him to 0 hit points. Namari was in a position to use her retributive strike reaction, which would have let Marnie take half damage, but whether she simply forgot about it or thought that he would survive the attack, she didn't do that. So, when an NPC is reduced to 0 hit points, I typically don't give them recovery checks. Monsters or passing NPCs will die outright. I do make an exception, however, when the NPC has story significance or their death would be problematic. I still don't give them recovery checks, as that would just be extra things for me to think about, but they do enter a cinematic state of dying. Typically, this will last until the party have had reasonable time to help the person, so if they could help them but choose not to, the NPC can still die. But usually, once the 12 or 18 seconds of combat are over, the party can save the dying NPC. Since having Marnie get slaughtered by an otter right outside of his home would be entirely derailing for the questioning of Trin, I decided to put Marnie into this dying state. After this, our heroes engaged the otter, keeping it focused on them. At one point, Wolfram hit it with a ray of frost, and I described how the cold momentarily caused the fire to go out on the impacted area before flaring back up. I was trying to hint that they could put the otter out, however, they didn't really clock onto this. The otter seemingly could not stop critting, and on its next turn it bit Namari, critically hitting her and reducing her to dying. The damage wasn't that huge, however, Namari and Misha hadn't healed up after the bee swarm fight, so they had both come into this at half hit points. With 2 people already reduced to dying from stray crits, I was beginning to feel a little nervous about their chances. This otter was supposed to be weaker than the boar, but apparently no one had told him that. As Misha and Wolfram stalked closer, I rolled a will save for the otter to see if it would flee, seeing that it was outnumbered. But this brave little otter rolled well and stood its ground. Misha used Soothe to get Namari back in action, while Wolfram continued to beat on the otter. Back on the otter's turn, another critical hit took Misha to dying. I don't know why the dice gods favoured this random otter so highly, but 3 attacks, 3 crits. I made another saving throw, hoping the otter would flee, but it remained brave. Namari brought Misha back up with lay on hands, and the group kept fighting. Finally, in some poetic revenge, Misha blasted the otter with a critical phase bolt and slayed the beast. As the otter died, the flames flickered out, and our heroes could see kind of sad, burnt flesh of the otter. Clearly, the otter had not been born like this, and was not properly acclimatized to its elemental form. Namari rushed over to Marnie and healed him. She tried to use treat wounds, but after failing, resorted to using lay on hands. There's now a running joke that Namari doesn't know how to treat humans after she has not been successful a single time when using treat wounds on a human. Marnie regained consciousness and staggered to his feet.
Where is it? What's going on?
It's fine. You're safe. Whatever that was, it's gone.
Oh, thank you. That thing would have killed me if you hadn't shown up.
I'm gonna look at the blood and the burn marks all over him. Seems like it most certainly almost would have. Here, take a seat. You shouldn't be set up in your condition.
He led our heroes inside and slumped into a chair. Trin was sat inside the house already and quickly ran upstairs to fetch some medical supplies immediately after seeing Marnie's wounds.
My God, there's been so many of these goddamn animal attacks recently.
Oh, do you have a lot of burning otters here?
Well, not specifically burning otters. This is the first one of those I've seen, but the wildlife's been much more active recently, and we keep getting all these strange elemental creatures. It's terrible. Can't even till the farm anymore.
What other creatures have there been?
I had Marnie list off a few random elemental animals. Since the point of this scene was to make the party fully aware of this plot point, I wanted to instill in them just how strange these elemental animals were.
That does sound a lot like the wolf that attacked us once, right?
Yeah, true. That one was toxic.
Have you encountered one yourselves?
Yeah, on our way to a city, but since when has that started? We got told that it's nothing usual to occur here.
Well, it didn't used to be a common occurrence. It's been about a year since these things started circulating the rumors of strange elemental animals. Most people didn't take them seriously. I certainly didn't, but I guess it was true.
Do you know where they are coming from, or are they just popping out of the woods?
They seem to be coming out of the woods. I'm certainly not going to be checking it out.
Do you maybe know if someone is living there? Or closer to the woods than you guys do?
There's Noara. There's this elf who seems to look after the woods. We don't really have much to do with her. She only comes to town every now and then to make purchases or something. I don't know.
Most of the townfolk are not particularly fond of Noala. They don't trust her, but they acknowledge her role in caring for the woods. She typically shows up at the beginning of Chapter 2, however, if our heroes seem eager to seek her out, I'm not opposed to bringing her in early. And by mentioning her now, it will further smooth that transition into Chapter 2 and 3.
Has she always been living there? Or did she also came, 1 year ago?
Oh, no, she's been around 10 years or so, after the Goblin Blood Wars.
I see.
Trin will come trotting downstairs with some bandages and start trying to patch him up.
With the return of Trin, the conversation moved on to the murder of Bort.
Well, I'm glad we were here to help, and we were, but we're actually here for to ask you some questions, Trin.
She looks up first briefly and gives you a puzzled look. And then, about the poisoning.
Yeah. Dalma told us where you lived. Hope that's okay.
Yes, I'm happy to answer questions.
In the base adventure, Trin hasn't heard about the murder until the heroes mentioned it to her. However, with the conversation I added about the animals, I figured it would be best to be able to get right into it, and had her hear about it from Marnie, who had gone into town in the morning.
Well, perhaps you could talk us through the evening while you were there. What, from your recollection, what happened prior to the unfortunate circumstances?
Well, as you can see, I didn't have a great time in that brawl that started. And she gestures to her face, and you see a really nasty bruise on the side of her cheek. I only heard there'd been a murder this morning when I was just nipping into town. It's terrible, and I don't understand why someone would do this.
Could you talk us through anything that happened last night as part of your time in the inn? Who did you serve? Who did you see? Did you notice anything?
Yes, sure. Well, I was serving food, and Colnroll was serving drinks. Because of that, I spent most of my night going backwards and forwards between the kitchen and the tables. I remember serving food to your table, the turnip porridge. That was right before the fight began, and then obviously during the fight, someone hurled a mug at me, and I left. I just dropped off the desserts, and then that's when I was attacked. Honestly, there's a bit of a blur until I got home, and then my brother, she gestures to the men, he sort of took care of me. I don't recall seeing anyone near the food who shouldn't have been. Amora prepared it, and Phinick plated it, and then I brought it to the table.
This mention of Phinick should be the first genuine suspicious tidbit of info that might direct blame towards him. However, our heroes had been suspicious of him from the beginning, likely because he recommended the parsnip pudding and has been pretty difficult to find so far. They spent a bit of time questioning her about the vial and the smell, but she wasn't able to recognize it due to the strong smell of alcohol in the tavern. Then they began to ask about who else was by the stable doors, as that's where they found the vial.
But the weirdest part was, aside from there, we also found it outside of our stalls in this piece of glass with the smell on it. So someone must have dropped it there.
You think somebody
Oh.
hid it outside?
Maybe, or when they were trying to, escape the scene, they dropped it by mistake. When you were running away, did you see other people maybe leaving too?
Well, when I went through the stables to get out, I saw Edra, the stable hand, was tending to your horses, and she had your druid friend, the gnome. She was with them. Aside from that, I just ran home.
Name-dropping Edra and Glunda gave our heroes a next target to talk to. Since Trin hadn't been able to give any direct help with new information, I felt that it was important to give them some direction. Players running out of avenues for investigations is particularly bad in a murder mystery, as this can result in frustration and stagnation. So far, no one had been able to provide any insight into finding Phinick, but our heroes hadn't given up and asked Trin if she had the answers that they were seeking.
Have you seen Phinick at all after the incidents or since the incident?
No, I've aside from my short trip into town this morning, I haven't been anywhere where he would be. Yeah, he's either at the tavern or off to wherever he hides.
So you do not know where he usually goes? If he's not in the tavern, I mean.
Not really. He's very shy and keeps to himself. I think it's tough for him being a goblin and all. After the Goblin Blood Wars, people are very mistrusting of them. It took him a long time to earn the trust of the people in the feed mill.
Can you think of a reason he might be responsible for what happened? Because everyone is a suspect, you understand? Even you.
She looks a little offended. I don't think he would do anything like that. He has no reason to. It took him so long to find a place in this town. If he wanted to stay here, there's no reason to ruin that. Especially for a passer through, like...
Nobody else knows about the abusive relationship that Hallard has with Phinick, so Trin genuinely couldn't think of any reason that he would poison a guest. And I wanted to keep the mystery going for a little bit longer, so I played down the likelihood of it being Phinick.
I don't think so. It depends who he was selling to. He sold to the tavern, of course, and provided us with stock and supplies. I'm sure there's other people in town he was selling to. Maybe he upset someone.
I'll turn to the other two. I wonder if we can maybe get his ledger of his dealings to see who he dealt with when he was here.
This is a good idea, and something that the adventure accounts for, so there is actually plenty to learn if they choose to take this route. The last topic of conversation was Amora. The cook had been concerned about somebody trying to damage her reputation. However, this is a false thread that I added to show that not all NPCs have reliable information. As such, Trin was dismissive of this idea. With no more questions, our heroes exited the house and planned their next move. Namori took another look at the otter as they exited. She took note of its burns and charred flesh, and that while the flesh was burnt, the fur remained normal. She realized that the otter had partially adjusted to the flames, but not completely. She also noticed that if it hadn't been on fire, it would have been a perfectly normal-looking otter.
Do you think it's a magic otter?
Perhaps it could be. Whatever magic's on it now would be dead, though. Well, be gone. Magic isn't alive.
I wonder if it was cursed.
Perhaps. I will do detect magic as well.
I wasn't entirely sure whether to have this sense anything. On one hand, the otter had been created via alchemy and was dead, so whatever the effect had been was clearly gone. However, on the other hand, the alchemical experiment had clearly had magical effects on the creature to leave it in this burning state. I decided that since it was dead, the magical effect of the alchemy had dissipated. As a side note, I'm not sure whether magical creatures such as elementals or awakened objects would even trigger detect magic. How do you guys handle that? Namari thought back to the caustic wolf and remembered that it had also looked damaged by its own element. For that creature, its lips and tongue had been eaten away by the acid. I wanted to tease that these creatures were forcibly given these elemental effects, and that it was poorly done.
Seems like these creatures are not born this way. We
Hmm.
should definitely keep an eye out with whatever's causing this, because something definitely is.
The question is, they did say there was an elf living deeper in the woods. Maybe they would know? Then again, would that even help us?
I mean, I think it's something we can consider alongside solving the current situation.
Well, they mentioned the ranger, but as far as I remember, no one really knows where they are since they are just walking the woods. But
I
they
definitely-
do return to town occasionally, apparently.
And they're an elf. I'm very sure we'd be able to notice them when they appear, so we can look into this when we get a moment. I don't think it's fair leaving this town to put up with this. If we can solve it before we make our way, I think it's the best for them. So
Then
I
again,
suppose-
what do elemental animals have to do with a poisoning?
well, I'm not saying they do, but it's definitely an affliction that's hurting the town.
Oh, I agree, definitely.
They began to discuss their next steps of the investigation.
I still believe we should try and find Phinick, correct? He's the only step in the food being made and the food being taken to the table that we haven't spoken to. So maybe we head to the tavern and wait for him to arrive?
Do you think he would come back?
Yeah, she did say that he always comes back after every bar brawl, but hasn't this time for the first time ever. Which is mightily suspicious. Just the problem that no one knows where he's living.
Eventually, they settled on going to speak to Edra about the night of the brawl. As they entered the stables, they saw the halfling woman Edra tending to the caravan's horses with a frustrated expression. Before our heroes could even begin to question her, she hurried over to them and cut them off with a request for their help.
Hello. Oh, sorry. I hear you're a bit of problem solvers. I don't suppose you could help me out with this. And she heads on back to the horses and starts like messing with them and like gesturing for you to follow.
Having an NPC make the first move in a conversation that the group initiated is a trick I sometimes use when I want to make a request of them, especially in the form of a side quest. Rather than allow them to lead the conversation and turn the NPC's request into a consideration or a favor, I put the group in the position of a listener. This way, the request becomes a form of quid pro quo. If you want to continue this conversation, do this thing for me first. It doesn't always work. If your heroes are quite fired up, they can still demand their questions are answered first, but you'd be surprised how often players fall for this.
What's happening? What's wrong? What do you need help with?
Your horses they're covered in fleas. They're pretty nasty ones. I hear you fought some wolves, and I'm doing my best to sort them out and look after the wounds. But I need some herbs. I need some rosemary from the big batch of bushes up in the forest. I don't have enough to treat all these horses, and it's pretty bad. You won't be able to leave until these are sorted.
Well, it would be bad for the caravan if the horses are in a bad condition, so we maybe should do this. Would you be fine if you, when we return, answer some questions we have?
Oh yeah, of course. Definitely, especially if you do this for me.
Okay, let's get going because I don't want to have fleas later on myself.
She kind of looks at your furry body and there's like a low whistle. Yeah, that'd be bad.
Since the request for Rosemary was directly related to the health of the horses' caravans, our heroes were happy to help. Why wouldn't they want to ensure their own horses are well looked after? Edra warned them about the bear that lives in the area, and then they set off to retrieve the goods.
When we come out, I want to talk to Misha. Please, are they? Do you think they could bite me too? And we like hold out like my scaly arm. Like I've never thought about it being a problem before.
I will take your arm and investigate your skin as much as I can with like everything that is actually laid bare. And give it a sniff too, just because. I think you're fine, actually. You look very, strong in the fight against them because they're so nasty.
I'm pretty confident with my fighting abilities. I'm not sure how much this would be useful, though. I'm going to point to my sword against something that tiny, but...
Oh, well, best solution is to get to the bush and, don't even have that problem. Let's get going.
Following her directions, they soon found the rosemary bushes and cautiously approached. They saw a large black bear sleeping in the clearing and knew immediately that they would need to do something about the creature if they were to gather the required amount of rosemary. The adventure usually has a grizzly bear sleeping in this clearing, which is a level 3 creature. Since I'm dealing with a party of 3, I replaced it with a level 2 black bear. The black bear's damage is much lower, and since a grizzly bear can potentially one-shot a level 1 character even without critting, I'd consider making this change for even a group of 4. The heroes don't have to rely on combat though. If they're quiet enough, they can stealthily gather the required rosemary without waking it up. They could also lure the bear away if they have the means to do so. The bear is significantly faster than most level 1 characters though, so leading it away themselves might not be a great idea. In the case of my group, they took the stealthy approach. Namari and Wolfram aren't particularly good at stealth, so they moved into the bushes, while Misha was the one who went forward and attempted to harvest the rosemary. We began to act in initiative, despite not actively being in combat. As Namari and Wolfram moved into position, their low stealth rolls failed to match the perception DC of the bear. Instead of having it immediately notice them, I had the disturbance cause the bear to awaken and become alert. Namari was first in initiative and wanted to keep the bear's attention away from Misha. She attempted to pick up a stick from the ground and wanted to hurl it in order to make a distraction. I asked her to make either a thievery or a stealth check to quietly pick up the stick. However, a critical failure caused the bear to immediately look in her direction. I didn't have the bear see through her stealth yet, although it was definitely going to use the seek action to locate her on its turn. I like to give my players multiple fail states when possible, although eventually I do just have to admit failure, and after a failed create a diversion action, it finally saw her clearly and true combat began. With only Namari's presence known, the bear rushed for her. It had no actions left to attack, but it ended its turn engaged with her. Wolfram gave up on his own stealth and tried to help Namari dealing with the bear, while Misha stayed hidden and gathered the rosemary. As Namari and Wolfram engaged the bear in combat, Misha tried to quietly gather the required ingredients. I had her roll a stealth check followed by a survival check to both stay hidden and successfully harvest the plant. I set the DC of the survival as 15 and told her she needed 3 successes to gather enough. After her first turn, she had unfortunately revealed herself, but she had gained her first success. The remainder of this encounter went relatively smoothly, with Namari and Wolfram handling the bear as best they could and using teamwork to keep each other safe. Meanwhile, Misha buffed them up from afar and struggled to gather more rosemary. Not long after, the bear was killed by a mixture of spell strike and phase bolt. With the bear dead, our heroes could easily gather the remaining rosemary they needed, without a roll this time, and patch up their wounds. As they looked at the dead bear, the topic of money came up, specifically the lack of it. And it's a fair complaint that in these early encounters, while XP is plentiful, there isn't a whole lot of money to be made. According to the party treasure by level chart, they should be receiving about 175 gold pieces throughout their time at level 1. This adventure doesn't seem to do this though, or I should say it doesn't spread it out across the level. If you add together all the loot available in Hallard's hideout, including the items he has hidden away or on his person, there's 261 gold pieces worth of treasure. However, Hallard's hideout is expected to be the final location the party visit in Chapter 1 and is intended to push them to level 2. So if a party wants to prepare by purchasing potions or new equipment, they're going to have to find a new way of making money, one that isn't part of the core adventure. Even the murder mystery is expected to be done out of goodness, and a reward is only offered if the party try to stop after defeating Hallard. The group wanted money to buy potions, so their idea was to sell the bear to someone. They attempted to remove some teeth and claws, but pretty average or straight up bad survival checks meant that their haul wasn't particularly desirable. They settled for trying to sell the bear's location at some time in the future.
Do you think this will be enough evidence to sell the location of the bear to the hunter, perhaps? I'll hold up the tooth chips and the fur scraps.
They're probably really big teeth, right? Since it was a big bear.
Yeah, they're like 4 inches.
Hmm.
To be honest, this looks like stuff that you just picked up off the forest ground.
I'm going to raise my lizardy eyebrows. And where would you find bear teeth on the ground?
I mean, maybe they lost the teeth while fighting some acidic wolves. And that fur, they just rubbed it off on a tree stump or something.
A little disheartened by their empty coin purses, our heroes returned to the stables and Edra. The halfling woman was preparing a large tub of ointment, and as the group entered, she eagerly took the rosary from them and set to work treating the horses. As she worked, she happily answered questions about the night of the poisoning.
So you had some questions then?
Yes, indeed. Do you, for starters, know anything about the poisoning incident that took place?
I know of the poisoning incident. I was here in the stables with that Glunder girl.
Did Glenda actually talk to you?
No, she just sort of helped and did things I asked.
Hmm. Yeah, that sounds like her.
Well, that night a bar brawl broke out. Did anyone come through here while the fighting was still going on?
Yes, I heard the ruckus begin. Phinick came out right away, almost instantly. He headed out through the stables, and then Trin came out, clutching some kind of wound on her cheek. I, of course, was nowhere near the food or the poisoning, so just want that noted. But those were the only two that came out through the stables that I saw.
Did anyone walk past the stables that you noticed?
I think Delma ran off to go get the sheriff. I think that was it. Oh, that paladin guy as well, Sir Lauren. He left. Although he just looked tired, he sort of headed out and wandered in the direction of his house.
Do you know where Phinick is taking off when he's not at the tavern?
Well, he sometimes sleeps here in the barn, but I know he has other places. I don't know where, but he's not here every night, so he must have somewhere.
What's the role of that paladin guy that you mentioned in town? Is he just hanging out, or does he have a specific job, perhaps?
Oh no, poor guy. He arrived here a few months ago with a different caravan, and they left without him. So he's sort of just been stuck here for the last few months. He mostly just gets drunk, and I don't know where he's staying. He must have found one of the empty houses.
Are there many empty houses here?
Oh yeah, the entire of the northern side of town is just empty. People just left. It's this place has a bad reputation. It's not been looked on too kindly by anyone, by the gods, by the people who live here. Everyone seems to slowly disappear. Just move on.
Edra mentioned that for a better overview of the town's history, they should speak to Targon Fulst, as he's the oldest member of the community that's still around and knows a lot about its past. I had mentioned the northern half of town looking abandoned when they first arrived in Edrin's Folly, but having it reiterated for them now gave our heroes the idea to scour that portion of the town for the elusive goblin. For now, though, they wanted to squeeze as much info out of Edra as they could.
When we arrived, there was a big, burly guy, pretty angry looking, eating in the feed mill. Do you know who he is?
Oh, yeah, that's Harlad. He's not a very nice man, but he keeps to himself, so
And what does he do?
I don't think he does anything.
Okay.
He gets money somehow, so I guess he is doing something, but I don't see him working.
Someone else did say that everyone here is, ignoring him and doesn't want to have anything to do with him. But would you happen to know where he lives?
No, no. As I said, he keeps to himself, and it's best for your own safety to keep out of his way, so we just leave him to it. He comes in every now and then for a meal. He always has the coin, so he's paying for his stuff. We might as well serve him. It's not like we're gonna have enough custom to bar anyone.
I see.
I had Edra tease Hallard's connection to some mysterious figure by explaining that he's getting money from somewhere despite not being seen to work.
And when you say it's for our own safety, did he actually, beat someone up around here, or, did even worse?
He's a dangerous man. He's I don't know. He's just very mean, very cruel. He bullies people. He knows that he's probably the strongest person in town in terms of being in a fight. He has all these scars on his face from years of fighting in bar fights. So I don't know. I just avoid him if I were you.
I see. Okay.
Where would we find Targan?
Targan, he'll be upstairs. As I said, he owns the feed mill. If you ask Elma, she'll probably point you in his direction, as long as he's of sound mind today.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
He's just old. I think he's like 80 years old.
Oh,
Poor eyesight, can't really walk more than a few steps. But as I said, talk to Delmer if you want to talk to him.
oh, we will keep that in mind. Thank you.
Also, one more thing. Do you happen to, have seen anyone dropping off some glass in front of your stable?
No.
The final topic of conversation was the poison vial. They asked her if she had seen who dropped it. She hadn't. They asked if she recognized the smell. I rolled a recall knowledge for her, and a high roll meant that she did. She told them that it was a particularly nasty poison called violet breath.
She kind of recoils as soon as you put it in front of her. Oh God, no! Don't keep that away from the horses. That's violet breath.
Oh, what is violet breath?
That's a very nasty poison. It's a pretty expensive stuff. Nobody around here should be able to afford something like that.
And pray tell, how do you know what this smells like?
Typical champion behavior. Somebody helps you out and you immediately become suspicious of them. Misha asked if anybody might be growing the plants used in the poison, but Edra told her that it's unlikely anybody in town could, as they would need specialist equipment. With some clues to act upon, they discussed talking to Targan next. However, they instead chose to comb over the northern part of town, looking for either Phinick or a sneaky alchemy setup where the poison could have been created. They spent over an hour checking each building one by one. I had them roll perception checks, and eventually, after moving up to a partially collapsed building, they saw Phinick huddled in a corner. In the base adventure, Phinick remains hidden for 2 days before the heroes catch him as he's making a supply run. I think the intention here is to give our heroes enough time to do all of these side encounters and get experience and clues. Since our heroes had actively begun searching for him in the northern part of town, though, and they had rolled well, it would have felt cheap for him to suddenly appear later regardless of their progress in the investigation. With the goblin found, he leapt through a window and we began the chase scene. This chase scene works slightly differently than the standard subsystem rules. Instead of the group working together to get successes, each player makes individual progress through the locations, and only one of them has to gain 4 successes before Phinick escapes at the 5th location. Some locations also have drawbacks should they fail a check at the location. The chase began as Phinick rushed into the market, ducking under tables and between legs in an attempt to lose his pursuers. Our heroes used either athletics to shove through the market or acrobatics to nimbly avoid carts and stalls. Wolfram succeeded, gaining his first success, while Namari and Misha struggled to avoid the commotion. Location 2 involved running down a long road. A fortitude saving throw was needed to sprint along this road and maintain their stamina. Wolfram critically succeeded and made great progress in catching up with Phinick. He was on 3 successes. Meanwhile, Misha and Namari both gained a success. Location 3 had the group run down a muddy and fouled alley. They needed to make a reflex saving throw to avoid slipping, or a survival check to choose a better path. This time, Wolfram failed, and he slipped into the mud, and the filth made him become sickened. Meanwhile, Namari critically succeeded and caught up with the front of the pack, and Misha also made progress. At location 4, the group ran across the backyard, and Namari was able to tackle the goblin before it escaped into the surrounding farmland. Phinick was terrified. In his mind, our heroes had already decided his guilt, and with the disdain for goblins since the Goblin Blood War, he assumed that they would simply kill him. Despite that, he didn't want to openly admit his role in the poisoning.
Calm down. We're not a threat. No.
Oh, I am.
Do you want to make an intimidation check?
Yes.
Alright.
Not very intimidating.
He sort of side eyes you with a little bit of caution, but he is not particularly intimidated.
Why did you run?
Because you invaded my home. Would you not
Invaded-
run? If 3 large, angry people barged into your house.
I think invade is quite a strong word for opening the door on a building that was not meant to be inhabited.
There's no reason I can't live in that house.
So, Mr. Goblin, why were you not going to work today?
There's been a murder. It's not safe.
Hmm.
Do you understand that you not returning to the scene of the crime is suspicious?
Well, I'd rather be suspicious than dead.
Do you have a reason to think that somebody would want you dead?
Nobody likes me here, so I don't feel safe with the killers around.
How long have you been in town?
All my life.
And don't you think somebody would have tried to kill you a long time ago if they had a problem with you?
I wouldn't expect one such as yourself to understand.
What do you mean by that?
You can protect yourself. If people are mean to you, if people bully you or tread on you, what can I do?
This conversation was clearly going to end in the discovery of him being the prisoner. However, I still wanted to milk as much sympathy as I could for the goblin before that reveal. With Wolfram's backstory, it's within reason that he'd happily kill Phinick, so I wanted to get Namari and Misha into an opposing mindset.
Do you mean Hallett?
You see he sort of glances up at you and his eyes begin to water slightly. There are lots of people.
Hmm.
Why do you stay if they treat you so?
Where would I go? Who would take me? At least
There's
I have
many-
work here.
I'm sure there's many a caravan that would help somebody as hardworking as you. Life on the road isn't as bad as some people make it out to be. Or
People don't like goblins, especially
Well-
not after the war.
Outside of that, now, is it really that goblins are like dishated in this world? Is it
So
like fact?
this region had something called the Goblin Blood War, where there was like a huge uprising of goblins, like hundreds, thousands of goblins went to war with like all the surrounding countries, and it was like extremely bloody until the goblins were like forced back into like one small forest, and then have been. It was like 10 years ago, but it's within living memory, so a lot of people are like real suspicious of goblins.
Hmm. Okay.
Look, we would like to have a conversation with you and ask some questions, but I'm going to gesture around to like the muddy garden that we're stood in. I don't think this is the best location for it.
They escorted Phinick back to his broken house. Along the way, he thought about running, but the sheer intimidating presence of our heroes kept him in check. By the time they had reached the house, Phinick had accepted his fate and immediately broke down crying.
I'm sorry. Please don't kill me.
I look confused. Are we? What? I think you get this whole situation completely wrong.
It wasn't my choice. He made
Oh,
me do it.
Since
who made you do what?
After the caravan arrived, Hallard, he came to me and he cornered me. And he gave me a vial of spices and said that if I don't put it in his food, I would find the sharp point of his knives. And he told me it would only make him sick. A little payback for a bad deal. I didn't want to be beaten again.
Oh my god, I'm so sad.
Yeah, goblins are as spineless as they come.
can you tell us more? Why would Hallard want to do that?
I don't know. Hallard doesn't like many people. Said it was a bad deal last time that he was here.
Was it this that he made you put in the food? I'm gonna get out the glass and hand it over, make him sniff it.
You don't need to make him sniff it because he just starts nodding as soon as he sees it.
Okay.
That's what he gave me. He said it was spices.
Does he hurt you often? You said you don't want to be beaten again.
Sometimes.
Well, how about we take care of him for you?
What are you going to do? I killed someone.
Who did he kill?
He made
You
me
mean-
kill someone.
Well, we can have a little chat with him, and if he happens to maybe disappear from town after that, your problem will go away, yes?
So you're not going to tell the sheriff?
I mean, unfortunately, if it comes to that, he may have to know, but your role was you were coerced. It wasn't your choice. That has to be taken into account. But I'm sure the sheriff will understand.
In reality, Phinick will of course be punished if they choose to hand him over to the sheriff. Self-preservation and a lack of foresight don't excuse you of murder. He might get off with a lighter sentence, though. Regardless of his fate, Phinick decided that if these adventurers claimed they could put an end to the abusive Hallard, he would help them in whatever small way he can.
Okay. Can you perhaps tell me?
He did an old, dead willow tree. It's not far from here. Just on the northwest part of the town. It looks abandoned from outside.
Okay. If I was you, I would stay here until we tell you he's been dealt with. Just to stay safe.
I've ran out of food. I need to go
We
to
can-
the tavern.
We can bring you some.
Would you?
The party loaded him up with rations and then headed out to confront Hallard. As for Phinick, I haven't decided what to do with him yet. Our heroes left him unguarded, so there's no real reason he would wait around to be arrested. However, if he was going to leave town, he probably would have done so right away. I'll make a decision for next time based on what I feel like will make a better story. It took our heroes no time at all to find Hallard's house next to the large dead willow tree. The building was partially collapsed and looked entirely unlivable from the outside. As they headed over, they discussed their plans for Hallard.
Maybe we can sneak around his house and look for evidence. But I doubt he'd have more than one vial.
True. But I doubt he's smart enough to make it himself, right? So he must have bought it from somewhere?
Well, like, where do you think he would get it if no one is brewing this locally?
Maybe his secret employer no one knows about. How does this man make money? He must have something going for himself.
Very true.
Yeah, we should just head over there, I guess, and see what the situation is.
They approached and began to search the vicinity. Finding nothing of immediate note, Wolfram opened the front door and triggered a rigged crossbow pointing at the door. The bolt fired into Wolfram, and a critical hit brought him straight to 0 health. Namari and Misha immediately panicked and began trying to help him.
Yeah, oh my god, what are you doing? Why would you just open the door? And I want to drag him around the corner here, real quick. I want to drag the body. And I don't know. I will drag you here and just give you one of my healing potions, because I'm kind of panicking.
The potion returned him to consciousness, but he was still extremely hurt. He took a potion of his own, which hardly helped.
Why did you drag him this way? I could have dragged him that way and got to him quicker.
I will just stare at you. Why the hell did you open the door?
I didn't open the
You
door. He
guys
opened the
silly.
door.
I have no survival sense, and yet I wouldn't have done it. Come on, treat him.
Namari's curse of being unable to treat humans remained, so she used to lay on hands to give him a boost. They explored the interior of the house, looking for secret doors or additional traps, but found none. Eventually, while searching the back of the house, they did find the blocked-off window that acts as a secret door. Since none of our heroes are trained in thievery and own no thievery kit, traps and locks are going to be something that they'll need to find alternate methods of solving. In the case of this locked window entrance, Namari tore it from the building with sheer strength. They entered the space and began to crawl through the small space beneath the fallen debris. As none of them noticed the trapped floorboards, Namari, who was leading the way, triggered the trap and felt rubble collapse around her. She successfully avoided the worst of the damage, however, the path was blocked. The group stepped back outside to assess their situation. They ended up taking a rest to heal up and clear the debris before finally making it to the awaiting trapdoor and entering Hallard's true home. After a short tunnel, the group opened the door to the basement kennel. Across the room, behind a wooden door, Hallard watched the group enter through a small grate and then pulled a lever, releasing the 4 angry hounds to attack the intruders. Hallard then fled deep into his home, and we rolled initiative. The hounds each lost 1 action waiting for the gate to open, and then rushed and relentlessly attacked our heroes. They didn't use much in the way of tactics, however the small size of the room meant that they could pretty regularly make use of their pack attack. If I'd been feeling meaner or a bit more comedic, I would have maybe had them all focus on the catfolk, but at level 1 that felt particularly dangerous. Still, before too long, the hounds were dead, and our heroes weren't too badly injured. They scoured the room for clues or loot and found a few alchemist firebombs and a vial of gross brown sludge. Before they pushed on further, we called the session here. This was another really productive session. They've now found Hallard's involvement, arguably before they should have, so we're moving things along nicely. Next session, they'll be facing down the town bully, and then I'll try and squeeze in some of the missed Chapter 1 encounters to top up their XP and fill out their missing lore. We're making excellent progress. I can see the adventure only being a handful of sessions long if they keep up this pace, which is what these standalone adventures are good for. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this adventure and want to stay up to date on it. That's all for today, friends. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.